Hey guys, this is Matt, and I'll be leading our discussion um, about my research assignment. And my topic is developing successful advertising messaging strategy. And this is part of in my text or my textbook, the International Marketing book. And I'm going to be talking about how to develop a successful advertising message strategy. So hopefully we can learn something together. But first of all, we got to take a look at, from a global perspective. And a good example is the Barbie versus Mulan. And we all know that Barbie dolls is a product by the Mattel company. And we know that Barbie is blonde, has blonde hair and blue eyes. And so Mattel is, selling this Barbie doll in Japan. And what they've done is they changed the feature on the Barbie doll with, Asian facial features, has the black hair, dressed in Japanese inspired fashions. And so Mattel did a consumer survey just to find out how well their Barbie doll is selling in Japan. And from that survey, they found that the original Barbie, which is, with the blonde hair and the blue eyes, sell as well in Asia as in the United States. And that's something we got to look at as you try to market a product that's, made in the USA or even Europe and going to a foreign market. And just looking at that and just think about, from that, from this example, that do you as the manufacturer, do you need to change your product to suit, the market that you're entering? So from what we can tell from this Barbie versus Mulan situation, I think, Asians are very familiar with the Barbie doll, and they know that Barbie has blonde hair and blue eyes, and I don't think they care about, the different features that Barbie has. So for that example, anyway. So there's a couple fundamentals and concept to advertising in foreign market, and pretty much, it's the same for all advertising strategies or to promote a product into a new market, either it's domestic or foreign. Here are the 7 concept or fundamentals. One, you got to perform market research. So you got to know your market. You got to know who you market, your target market, the people, what what they need, what they do want, their demographics, income, housing, and everything about your target market. So you got to do that first, and everybody does that. 2 is specify the goals of the communication. What are you trying to achieve with this advertising campaign? So that's the goal of that. Try to figure out why we're advertising our product into this market. And 3 is to develop the most effective messages or message for the market segments that you have selected, your target market. So figure out the best way to do it, the language, how you do it, the colors, all the things that matters to your target market. And then you select the media. It could be television, it could be radio, it could be print, it could be internet, social media. You decide what's the best way to reach your target market. And then number 5, you compose and secure a budget based on what's required to meet that goal, what the goals of that advertising campaign. And then you execute the campaign, and then evaluate the campaign to see if you did meet the goal, or your return on investment was well spent or not. Or if it's good, great. If it's not, what do we need to do, or what do we need to change to make it better? So that's this 7 steps that I say most company or all company do when they're about to start an advertising campaign. And we can take a look at the goals of international advertising or even just advertising in general. One is to establish new brands to that market. So it could be, a company that's making, a lot of products already in that same market, but you got a new model, new brands, and you want to push that out to your consumer base or your target market that you have these new brands, and so you want to do that. So advertising, that's one of the goals. The other one is to introduce a new product line, like something new, something different that your target market haven't seen before. So that's what you want to do. That's another goal. And then a third one could be to upgrade a quality image. And we've seen a lot of that in recent years, like airbags, especially in automotive. So they do a lot of, advertising to attract or to bring some of those customers or consumers back. For example, like, Audi with their emission issues. And so how do you bring these folks back, your customer back? So you go on and do advertising to promote that, hey, we have quality issues and we fix that. Now our product is good and great. So come back and buy our cars. So that's something that, that's another goal for, advertising. So let's take a look at the messaging challenge for doing international advertising. So if you look at this diagram, you see the cultural context A, so from one culture, and then you have the cultural context B, the other folks or the other people that's receiving the message. And then usually it starts with the information source from that. And here it is, and you can look at it, say, the first step is the information source, and where is that information coming from? So that's normally with the advertising or the company that's making the product or the goods and the service. They're the one who have that information source and is, doing this advertising campaign. And then it goes through this encoding process where the message from that information source is converted into symbolism, words, and then gets transmission or gets transferred to the receiver. And then the message channel, it could be a Salesforce, could be advertising media, could be a lot of different ways to use this information to promote or send this message through. And then on the other end, the receiver received the information, so they had to decode the message to their language, to their, how they, receive some of these messages. So that's what they do. And then the receiver, either they receive the message or they receive part of the message, or they, don't understand the message. And so, it could be something like that. And then the receiver will provide a feedback, how effective the message was. If they are the intended target, that, feedback gets, gets, to where the information was coming from. And then in between all that stuff, there's a lot of noise, a lot of competitions, a lot of distractions. Could be, could be from government, could be from technologies, could be language barriers, could be cultural barriers, and there's a lot of noise in between. So how the message started from one end to another, and just trying to figure out if the message got across from the source to the receiver, and the receiver understands that message. And that's the process of advertising. So let's take a look at some of limitations to international advertising. Linguistic languages is a big limitation, especially if you are selling your products into another country or another, that's language becomes a limitation or a barriers to that. So let's take a look at some example of what happened. So Microsoft Windows 7, their slogan or their motto is, I'm a PC and Windows 7 was my idea. So Microsoft did advertising and promote Windows 7 into the French market and the German market. And so when they translate, I'm a PC and Windows 7 was my idea. So in the translation in the French language, it says, I said what? I said I wanted a more intuitive PC, and there it is, more intuitive. No one can refuse me anything. So you see how the translation changed a little bit from I'm a PC and Windows 7 was my idea. Now let's take a look at the German translation, and from that same slogan from Microsoft, it gets translated in the German language. It says, so this is what it says in the German language. I said improve the security, and they did. Did I do that, or did I do that? So you can see that language is a big, big component to figuring how you do a successful advertising campaign on that. Other linguistic limitations and examples, such as, let's take a look at Pepsi. Pepsi's slogan was come alive, and then it gets translated to another language, and it says come out of the grave. So I don't know about that. So in a Chevrolet, they produce a car, a car model called Nova, and then in Spanish it's translated, it doesn't go. And I don't think they sold a lot of Nova in Mexico or Latin America. Tropicana tried to sell some orange juice to, Cuba or the Cuban American market. And so it says Jungo de China. I can't pronounce that right. Pardon my Spanish there. So the word China is it means orange in Spanish, but when it's translated over, the Cuban American community didn't think could not relate China to orange. All they saw was China was the country, not China, the orange. And so they were not fond of drinking juice that's with a communist twist to it, And then Apple, the Apple example in Ireland, you have their iPad and then you have iPod, but to the Irish, they sound the same. iPod. I hope Philip can help us with that pronunciation, but we'll talk to Philip another day. And then Parker Pen, their slogan was, it won't leak in your pocket and embarrass you. But when it's translated in Spanish, it says, it won't leak in your pocket and make you pregnant. So I don't know how many pens they sold in Spanish-speaking country. Now, cultural diversity limitation is another barriers to successful advertising campaign. And we can take a look at some example. I have two here. Procter & Gamble with their Pampers product. You know, you've seen the commercial where stores are delivering babies, you know, but in Japan, stores do not deliver baby. It's done by Giant Peaches. So I don't know how well that, you know, goes in the Japanese market. And then Toyota was trying to promote or advertise their SUV called Prado. But in China, the word Prado means rule by force. So that reminded the Chinese of the 1937 Japanese invasion, because Prado SUV is made by Japan. So I don't know about that, how much they sold, how many cars, how many Prado SUV they sold in China. I mean, in Japan, China, yeah. There's also other limitations like medias. Are there media available? Are there TV stations? Are there radios? Are there internet connectivities? Are there print medias? You know, it limits to how much or where you can advertise your product. And then accessibility, who has access to that, you know, media? Do people have it? Do you know, government have it? Do business have it? So who has it? So it may, you know, limit to, you know, to you as an advertiser to figure out the best way to do it. Another limitation could be production or cost, you know. So depending on the budget, how much budget do you have in the company to do advertising, and that could, you know, restrict you to different ways of, you know, trying to advertise your product, and then figure out what is the best way to reach your target market. And so that's ways or a process of how to develop a successful advertising messaging campaign by understanding the culture, the language, all the limitations, understanding the process of communication, how messages, you know, get from one end to another, and, you know, looking at all of this and trying to figure out the best way how to craft that message, and then the best media to promote that message, and then hopefully that will get to your target market, and they receive the message, they understand the message, they know what you're selling, they know about the product, and then in turn generates, you know, profits or sales and revenue, you know, to you as, you know, as a company. So thank you for watching, and hopefully you learned something. Ashante?